So welcome everyone to this webinar on diversifying your CSA. I'm Tali, I work for the CSA network and we support community supported agriculture and try to promote it, work on policy and mostly try to support farms. And we're very grateful to Pebble Trust for funding this series of webinars. And I will introduce our speakers. Today we have Mhairi Player from Berwick Wood. We have Christine Morrison from Go Local, Dan Burston from School Farm, and Joe Cartwright from Swillington Farm. And all of them have some experiences of diversifying their farms to share with you. So I think maybe I'll pass on to Mhairi to start us off.
I'm from Berwick Wood Produce, and we are 32 hectare woodland just north of Aberdeen. This is kind of aerial view of it. The market garden is on the south facing slope there. It doesn't actually look quite like that anymore after the storms came through last year, but that's the rough idea of it. We are quite close to Aberdeen city, just actually 12 miles outside the city. Aberdeen is quite a compact city of about 270,000 people, and it's surrounded by a large area of land, Aberdeenshire, which has a similar population. Like most places, it has a large discrepancy between the wealthy and poorer areas. Most of the poorer areas are in the city, though there are a few in the shire as well. And many people have above average salaries. It's the kind of oil capital, so it's known for its energy production, but the other industry does include agriculture, which is mainly beef and sheep. And I've lost my cursor, there we go. Oh, sorry. So we began in 2018. We originally planned to be a CSA, but in the end we had to start a veg box scheme. We found it difficult for people to sign up. We've grown from about 15 to 50 weekly subscriptions, and we've grown from about 15 weeks to 32 weeks a year. Some years we don't buy in at all, other years we buy in from other local market gardens in the area. We do have other markets which include cafes, and we did have food hubs and independent shops, but they've actually all shut during this year. There's one full-time market gardener, which is me, and my husband works on infrastructure, the wood and the pigs. We've been working other jobs in between, so we felt that we needed to diversify really for two reasons. That we felt it would be easier with diversification to support two or more incomes on the farm, and to use the land more effectively, because there's actually quite a lot of it. When we were looking at diversification, we decided that it had to really fit the objectives of our land, which was to do with ecological improvement, regeneration and biodiversity. We're actually part of Northwoods, which is Scotland, the big picture. And we decided it must provide for the local community in the form of food security, and that if we were doing it, had to provide some kind of time pound value, so that we weren't either using too much time for too little money value, or it just cost too much. And we decided this could be achieved over time. And also we looked very carefully when we were doing the costs at how much we were saving, not just how much we were spending. We also found it quite useful if the products that we had some diversification within them. For example, if you're doing pork, you don't have to have raw meat. You could do a different product rather than raw meat, maybe smoked meat or something. We look at diversification as both diversification between enterprises, i.e. adding other enterprises, but also looking at, can we maximise or diversify within our enterprise? What we have found is that we've kind of got a finite customer base of around 50 boxes. Every time it goes higher than that, it just ends up, people kind of come away again, and we end up back at 50. So we've kind of decided that's our number that we're going to revolve around, but that doesn't quite cover all our costs. We also find that we have quite a short season this far north, and we have most of our produce comes out from July till October, but actually our demand is more October to May, which is a little bit challenging, that our produce kind of bulk doesn't meet our demand. So we've looked at kind of ways to kind of solve that a little bit. We looked a lot at, can we improve our winter growing? Obviously polytunnels help that, but 100-mile-an-hour winds take them down as well. So there's a little bit about how much to put up of those. We're moving to the CSA to help regulate that income, to make it a bit better, that people don't just drop out and come back and forward. We haven't really had much in the way of a spring recently, so we looked quite a lot at perennial growing, which I noticed there is a webinar on quite soon, so that fits in well, and that we found that quite good, actually doing quite a lot of perennial brassicas now. We've looked at whether we can just have some beds that really are for value plants or specialist growing. We've done salsify this year, which has worked quite well, and trying to look at adding different markets in the summer. There's a lot of rural tourism here, so putting boxes out to tourists has been a useful way of doing things. Obviously, adding value helps, and we've been looking at kind of networking with other growers in the area to try and up the amount of local veg in the area, because it's quite poor. Our second kind of area of diversification is our woodland. We are interested in that we bought a woodland rather than a farm, and we put the farm back inside the woodland, which is a little bit different, obviously. So we now have 19 hectares of mainly a conifer crop, which has been really good to use as capital. Obviously, you can't just have a woodland just like that, but it is something, if people are looking at acquiring land, I would have a look at woodlands as well, because they're actually quite often easier to buy or easier to get hold of than some other areas of land. And it's been on the whole a positive experience for us. What we're doing at the moment with our woodland is we've thinned it quite significantly. It hadn't been thinned, which was then a bit of a problem when the storm came, but it gave us a good cash crop last year, amount of cash that we've been able to use to buy different things and start other enterprises, which has been very helpful. The other thing about having wood on the farm, we've added a lot of wood, such as fast-growing willows and things. And having different types of wood on the farm has been really good for using to cut your need to buy in things. Like we've used a lot for fencing, we've used a lot of dead hedging. We're now making a lot of our own potting compost, which has been really helpful, because that's a lot of cost, and also one of the things that puts our carbon count up, because that's often a lot of buying in plastic and travelling up. The other thing that we're doing as well is we're looking at it as a small scale energy for local people. So a lot of really, really local people have come and bought long, big bits of wood and then cut them up themselves. So we can provide those quite cheaply, because it doesn't take a lot of equipment to do that. And we also have a small splitter, so we can split some wood as well, but we haven't gone down the line of doing firewood as a major project, because that just wasn't cost effective for us. This year we took pigs in. We had 6 Oxford Sandy and Blacks, and that's 2 of them. And they were really, really helpful they just kind of acted as biological tractors. So we didn't need to use a tractor or get in a tractor to use, or a plough. So they've turned over some fields for us that we've now put down to herbal lays. They've really helped with regenerating the land. They've been nice to have, actually. They were quite good company when I was on my own quite a lot in the summer. And we found that we can sell them quite easily alongside the veg. They're a good animal to have if you haven't got a lot of experience with animals. They don't have quite the same difficulty of maybe cows, and they don't die as often as sheep, who just tend to do that sometimes. And we found as well that we can vary the breeds. So at the moment we're doing breeds that churn the land quite heavily, but we're going to go to a large black when we want it to do a bit less. And we found there's lots of products that we can do that suit market. We didn't get entirely right this time, with the cuts we got, but there's lots of changes that can be made. Benefits we found is that we're getting really good plant animal synergy, and that would really kind of like what Oxton Organics are doing with clearing up their market garden using sheep and stuff. So it's a good thing I've found. We've also found that we've really increased our sales per person, which is really helpful when you have a kind of finite market, or you find people, you're not having to always look for new people. We've also closed our system, which is really good for sharing resources between the enterprises. And we found that having more enterprises has allowed us to kind of look at students coming on to do things, engaging with some vulnerable groups in the area as well. And there is probably more potential for possibly having staff if we can get a better income. Some of the challenges have been the wind. This was and the flood that happened. There was Caterpillar Tunnel didn't survive that this weekend again. Also that we find that you've got to have money for putting the infrastructure up front, and that can be difficult, or finding the time to do that can be difficult because you don't get any return until you've done that. If you have to do any new marketing, that can be quite hard as well. Sometimes just finding the time. We also found that timing is a little bit more challenging than we thought, because we run the boxes for 32 weeks. It's a good idea to kind of get the pigs in the right area so that they're actually going to butcher and available for the boxes, but that doesn't entirely work sometimes with our seasons. So it's working out what the best seasons for different things are to save doing lots of extra marketing. And also you need to think about what skills you have. If you don't have them, can you get them? And again, that's sometimes just time and money. In summary, we found it to be great. I would say definitely match it to your objectives. Business plans do help. Always do your figures, and remember that you actually have to put in your time. That is money as well. Look at things and how they can be reused, so we can use our fencing for different things. Again, thinking about the seasons. And we've also looked at as kind of diversification as a progression. So it doesn't have to be one thing, it can change. So it's talking a wee bit about how the pigs might change, but also might change animal as the land changes. And really trying to involve other people in your diversification. We've got students coming to do some research projects next year, which is really all about what we've done in diversification. So though you don't make an income from that, they're actually very keen to come and help plant trees and stuff as well, which can be really useful. I hope that was okay.
So our story is a little different from Mhairi's story, and ours is an earned income story rather than a direct diversification story. So we're growing in Northumberland, which is pretty close to Scotland, and we've been on the go for 10 years, and we've now got 4.5 acres, 5 polytunnels, and around 100 members. We've contracted with 2 growers, and we're weekly supplying 85 medium equivalent crop shares for 50 weeks of the year, and we do the supplementing stuff when we get to the hungry gap. What we set out to do, and it occurred to me when I was thinking about this webinar, that our earned income strategy actually started right back at the beginning, because we decided right early on that we wanted to be financially sustainable. And for some, in our naivety, that meant we thought we would make the numbers that we needed relatively easily. And we were very anti going for grants, because we'd had enough experience in our other lives of being grant chasers. So we started out right at the very beginning with the idea of a community-owned and led enterprise, which was a farm. And to create the capital that we needed, we didn't have a grant, we actually earned income. So we did various activities to create some income that we could then invest in getting started. And so the whole thing was about us as consumers becoming producers and being real owners of the enterprise and becoming part of a local economy. And those principles are really important to whatever we've decided to do in terms of creating an earned income. So members join, we do an annual survey, and we know that there are kind of 5 key reasons that people join us. The big one is greenness, being a part of an environmental project, that's a climate change agenda, that a new sense of community, a different community, that whole thing about local ownership, the love of vegetables, tasty vegetables and growing. And then a lot of people interested to see if we can make a social enterprise or community-led enterprise work. But basically, we're a cooperative, and we have several types of membership within our structure. So you can be a supporter and just pay an annual fee, or you can work share and give your labour, or your crop share and you take out a subscription for your weekly share. And then we have other categories, contractors and local producers. In addition to the core of what we do is veg growing. And in addition to that, we have events, both social and workshop, different kinds of events. We run a refill zone, and we do together a collective order monthly to SUMA. We have field sales, which is basically tinned foods, because we haven't got any kind of cold storage, SUMA goods, local produce, like members who are also producers, and other local producers who are around us. So we have those available to everybody all the time. We have occasional offers to members, like trying to link with other local producers of beef and turkey and hogget and things. Yeah, our Christmas bundle is coming up soon if you want to place an order. And then we also like organic mangoes, are very lovely. And we introduced ourselves to crowd farming, and we love it. So how did that happen? This is the story, really, and it is very much an organic story. From the get-go, because membership engagement was or our members and being community-led was so key to our principles. We always had social events, and so we had a harvest supper with a Halloween quiz and a late summer barbecue, which always managed to make profits as well. And then we developed we also started with a couple of other kind of social events, like our growers' question time. But that quite quickly started to develop into workshops. So that whole events. So one of the headings of our earned income is events. And each event has to wash its face and put something back into the coffers. So that was starting to develop quite nicely. And we had a volunteer board member who said what she wanted to do, her contribution would be to turn the events into a clear profit-making heading in our accounts. And she set herself a target, and she was doing that tremendously well. And we were running about one a month until COVID hit. We also, another of the members decided that if we were talking about being environmentally sustainable, we should look at plastic use, and we should encourage our members to be a little more conscious of their plastic use. So she introduced the idea of having refills in the shed where we collect our veg from. And that has grown dramatically and is very, very popular. We get through gallons of washing up liquid. We also, and that quite quickly translated into extending the SUMA ordering. So not just to individuals, but creating a co-op order and putting stuff on the shelves. And those two things contribute regularly to our finances. And then the other thing that we realised, or I particularly was keen on, was it's great to have different things to talk about. You can't just keep talking about kale and chard. It's also quite nice to have something to talk about that's what else do you do? How else do you demonstrate that you're environmentally friendly without going into the detail of water usage and etc., etc. So this is a kind of like, it's more of a human story, and so it's good for attracting attention and reaching more people. So it has that a promotional aspect to it. This year we acquired a grant, which was, although we didn't like grants, which has given us a shed, which we're very excited by, because until now we've just had a lean-to thing, which isn't very healthy when you're trying to sell soap, for example. And new things keep being added to this our field sales area. So when we look at what our earned income, we're always looking at these 4 areas. So is there a member benefit? Does this pay, does this give something back to the members? Is this environmentally sustainable? Everything has to make some kind of profit. And how does it help with promotion, or how can we use this promotion? And not all of them fit all 4 of those headings, but those are key areas for our earned income. Financially, during COVID, this really, the field sales really helped. We don't make a huge amount each year, but it has grown, and it is growing, and it's getting more attention from the board in terms of how do we, maybe we will go into a bigger scale diversification as the others on this webinar are. Yeah, so financially it has helped us, and even small amounts make a difference. So our benefits are, it's really useful having some extra income that's unrestricted, and even little amounts can make a huge difference. The COVID year really demonstrated the value of having helping us keep going, but we could keep going with our growing, but our income didn't dip. We lost our events, but our field sales kept held high. It's a great way to involve volunteers, because you're not asking them to bend or weed or lift or whatever, but they can get involved in very different tasks that there are always skills and experiences within the membership from retail, and people like getting involved in that. And we've learned to we would like to develop, and we are developing more partnerships with more local producers. And one local producer, the deal that we do with him is that he promotes us and we buy from him. It's a great, we've got a great deal going there. We attract interest because we're more than veg, and you can go and buy peanut butter any time of the day or night. But there are lots of challenges, of course. It takes a lot of volunteer hours. People are always time poor. It creates a lot of extra work. If you're going to make it successful and worthwhile, you've really got to put the effort in playing around with a formula to apply to the financials, like what is the percentage that you want to achieve from your earned income, and how far are you driving that, or is how much of that is just a benefit to members. Getting back on track with events has been quite hard after COVID, so we've lost out there. And it's always that balancing act, isn't it? So the balance between supporting what we're doing and not distracting the main purpose of the co-op. So there's always a discussion going on about where next. Who knows where that will lead us? And that's me.
Just a little bit of context. I'm at the other end of the country, down in Devon, at School Farm CSA. We're 1 mile from a town called Totnes. The land, our 3 acres of land, is rented from the Dartington estate, who are a large landowner in the area. And we've got, you can see most of the farm there in that picture. We've got about 500 square meters of glass houses. Project was set up about 10 years ago. Well, yes, this is our 10th year. And the focus from the beginning, which sort of came out of a community conversation, was that there was a lot of interest for good local food, but there wasn't loads of interest for the sort of CSA where members were expected to get involved on a regular basis, doing volunteering, doing work in the field. that was the sort of the feeling 10 years ago. And so it was set up in the vein of, you know, people paid their subscription. We have a regular 2 sort of open days a year. We have a weekly volunteer day, which people can attend, but there's absolutely no obligation to. Yes, so we've, yeah, moving on. Ooh. Okay, so just to give a sense, so we've, this is a little pie chart of the income from 4 years ago, where, as you can see, so sort of a third roughly was from the CSA shares themselves. So for the first 9 years of this business, the offering was seasonal. It was for 30 weeks of the year, from June until Christmas, and then nothing, you know, that, and for that period everything was provided, or, you know, 99% was provided from the farm's produce, and there was a good chunk of teaching, you can see there, good chunk of wholesale to, I mean, when I say wholesale, this is like selling to very local shops and restaurants, and you know, a sizable wedge of grant funding. The farm was grant funded initially, and then every year for the first 9 years. So this is this year's pie chart. So in the last 3 years, we've made a real concerted effort to become financially sustainable, which meant a few things to us. One was independent of grant funding. One was being able to pay all the core staff the sort of real living wage. For sure, overtime still gets worked and unpaid, and, you know, certain things are inevitable. But we've kind of, as of this year, we've sort of basically achieving our aim. Yeah, we've, you know, also you can see the CSA shares represent a much larger share of the pie chart here. One really significant thing we've changed in the last 3 years is we now offer a veg share year round. So we made the decision to buy in if necessary for certain months of the year, but also to sort of up our production and to expand and broaden our production, and to produce for year-round shares. And this, you know, I'd probably say this was the single most sort of significant business decision that we made in order to making the farm sustainable for us. Just out of interest, that yellow wedge of seed production in there is about £2,000 to £3,000, just so you can sort of gauge how much different things are. And teaching, just to say, that's sort of unusually, I'm going to talk more about teaching now, but teaching's so small this year because our member of staff who sort of leads on that has just been unusually busy elsewhere. It was a larger chunk last year and should be again next year. So yeah, to sort of go on to the whole diversifying thing. So I just so mainly talking about teaching with this slide, but I thought I'd lump in there tours and events as well. So the teaching that's always happened at School Farm is predominantly the teaching of level 1, 2 and 3 horticulture programs, which are generally 12-week courses, 1 day a week, and they're accredited by a local college, in our case Bicton College. So there's been a really wide appeal. They've always been sort of very well subscribed to. That they can be subsidised through the sort of funding bodies that which we don't have to deal with directly, but we still get paid for them. So in general, sort of running one of these 12-week programs has sort of brought in about £1,000 of income to the farm beyond paying the teacher themselves. And it's been a really nice complement to the farm. Basically, I think it works very well for the students to be learning about horticulture or gardening, sort of, which for them almost all the time is sort of garden or allotment scale is where it's particularly relevant. but to be learning about that within the context of a market garden is really great. And we sort of integrate where possible certain jobs that need doing on the farm, and you know, we sort of get them involved in things along the way. So that's sort of, yeah, it's felt really sort of mutually beneficial. Like, it's great for the farm to have them there, and for them to be at the farm is a kind of enriching place for them to be doing these studies. We've also, you know, on the aspect of teaching, we've also a number of times run just sort of day or weekend courses. At the last CSA where I worked, we ran regular setting up a CSA course, which was obviously a very specific thing, but and at School Farm we've run courses on herbal medicine and that sort of thing. So, you know, there's potential if you have sort of a space that can host people for all sorts of these things. We also offer, I mean, there's I suppose specific to our location, there's a number of kind of educational institutes close to us, and we offer tours of the CSA and sort of talking about the CSA model to these different student groups, and that sort of forms a small part of the income of the farm. And then just to mention the event, so we have a, you know, we aim to run two open days a year. Very much the primary focus of these open days are community events, to bring the community together, to sort of feed the land, have people sort of really fill the farm and just have a great time. But I really feel that's not mutually exclusive to them also being profitable events. And like, we had a really great event this harvest season. It was sort of the 10th birthday party of the farm, so it was a bit of a particular one, but we had a great day, and that brought in a couple of £1,000 of income to the farm on its own. So things like these, I think, sort of maybe gaining a reputation for sort of running regular community events can sort of really bolster the whole, everything that that we're all offering to the community, and help the viability of the whole project. Swiftly moving on. So yeah, one other specific thing that we do alongside our main activity of growing the veg is growing seed. It's a particular interest of myself and my colleague. There's as you know, not to talk too much about it, but there's a huge dearth of organic seed produced in the UK, and a hugely vulnerable market. And so we work with two seed companies, Vital Seeds and Real Seeds, and grow, you know, a very small range of seed crops for them, which, you know, they then sell through their businesses. So this has been great. It's, you know, I think there's the potential with seed crops to, you know, to choose crops that suit your situation. For us, we haven't got huge amounts of land to dedicate to seed production, but we're kind of, what we do have is a few kind of quite kind of not very well loved polytunnels, which, you know, wouldn't actually be that great because of the ventilation and whatever for growing summer crops for the CSA. I mean, we could, but they're not ideal, but they're perfect for certain seed crops that just need to be covered and have a certain amount of ventilation. So there's some pictures here. There's lettuce seed in the bottom left. So yeah, this year, for example, we grew two crops of lettuce, one of chili and one of tomato. And this could have brought in sort of £4,000 worth of income to the farm. We kind of estimated it would bring in 2,000, and I think in reality it's going to be around that aspect. The sort of the really dry spell through the summer sort of hit the amount of seed that the lettuce crops produce. There's always these, you know, things when you're sort of taking a crop through a whole nother stage of its life cycle, there's a lot more potential for things to go wrong. But it's a fascinating thing to do. It feels very complementary, and the work for, you know, so yeah, there's a lot of potential to design, to choose the crops that sort of balance the work around sort of the busy period. So for example, the lettuce basically just gets on with its own thing, needs support through the busy summer, and then we just need to harvest it at the right time, which tends to be in September, when things are a little bit more spacious. So it's sort of really having the input at the right time. But yeah, you know, and I mean, other crops would be really different. We have loads of other people growing that sort of, there's lots of other small market gardens close to us. So cross-pollination for those sorts of crops would be an issue. But if you're in a really isolated site with plenty of land, you might choose to grow different things to us, like outside crops that could cross but won't in your situation. So it's an interesting thing to consider, I think, and can bring in yeah, some extra money alongside other activity. And then I'm running over time, but just very quickly, just to say, yeah, so our last kind of real other income stream is wholesale, by which I do just mean selling probably to half a dozen local shops and restaurants. For this, we really try to keep it incredibly simple for us. Our focus is absolutely on the CSA, but we see an opportunity in the kind of 3 peak months of the year to bring in extra income. For us this year, that was about £4,000. So it's not insignificant. I mean, it's not huge at the same time. The kind of, I guess with the CSA, you never want, you know, every week of the year you're doing the same number of veg shares. You never want too much and you never want too little, but it's kind of impossible not to have some degree of abundance in the sort of summer, early autumn. And so you know, we try to make the most of that opportunity. So we really, you know, sort of focus on things like punnets of tomatoes that we, you know, everyone wants lovely tomatoes in the summer. So we try to sort of, yeah, keep it really simple, sort of aim to just have surplus for wholesale of a very small number of crops, but really try and make the most of that. And it's, you know, for certain crops, for example, we were selling basil through quite a long season to a local pizza restaurant, and that worked really well. It was, you know, it was quite hard to sort of have enough basil for us regularly to give to all our CSA members. We gave it occasionally, but actually regularly picking small amounts of basil for this pizza restaurant worked very well, kept the basil plants going. So small example, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, I suppose just to end with saying, like, all of these are kind of alternative ways to generate income alongside the CSA. I mean, another way is to kind of broaden the CSA and like the CSA offering, which we are also doing as well. It's not really bringing us any income at the moment, but it's kind of developing the farm as a bit of a food hub. So we, you know, people can also on the same subscription model sign up to getting regular loaf of bread or raw milk or fermented foods, and they just contact those other businesses directly, make all the monetary exchanges directly with them, but with the farm's the pickup point, and so it sort of brings more people to the farm in that way. And that feels something like you know, really beneficial for the farm, and something hopefully that will continue to develop. Right, better stop. Thank you.
We're 5 miles from Leeds, so we've got large population on the doorstep. We also have the problems that come with it, like fly tipping, trespass, antisocial behaviour, and all the rest of it. But we have got the opportunities to diversify. We've got a fantastic farm. It's a lovely wildlife area. We've got water voles, bittern, harvest mice. It's a fantastic area for nature. So it really is a mixed farm. There's half of it is woodland, marsh and water. And we've got a 2-acre wall garden that we use for the CSA.
Sorry, Joe, your video's off. Is that intentional because you've got internet issues, or
no, it's probably switched off when I tried to do this. Does it matter?
No, I suppose you're all right. If you can just press the start video button.
No, I'm not going to touch it now.
Okay, fair enough.
But you can see the slides, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the main thing. You don't need to see me. Right, what we have at the moment is suckler cows, mainly British whites, We've had Angus and Herefords as well, but I'm concentrating on the rare breeds where I can. Sheep, we've got Texels and Hebrideans. Poultry, we do meat and eggs, so I've done ducks, geese, chickens, turkeys for meat, and then we have the layers for eggs. Obviously, that's not a recent photo, they're all inside. We do a veg in the wall garden, and honey is also in the wall garden, but a local beekeeper does the egg, honey. The pigs, we've had saddleback pigs. There's always been pigs on the farm up until July this year. Cut back on the pigs because I needed a hip replacement and they were beating me up. So whether the pigs come back or not, I don't know. It's very difficult to make any money out of the pigs. The dairy cattle, it was quotas that did me in with that, converted to organic with the idea of going back into milk production. But the market had just gone when I got there, so that didn't happen. Right, these are all the profitable enterprises, which really annoys me because food should be most important. But my husband runs the caravan storage, Christmas trees and fishing lakes. I do school visits under HLS, which pay £100 a time at the moment. I should have also mentioned we're in the SFI pilot scheme as well. Somebody else runs a forest school. I don't like schools in there again. Children's parties and weddings on the farm. I've also just started smallholder training, which is sort of a pilot project at the moment. So I've got an acre, probably an acre and a half of land, which a couple are using, and they've got my help, you know, if they need any help, and also my machinery, trailer and everything else. So they're doing more or less a mini farm of my farm, but with a bit of help before they move on to their own small holding. We've done various woodland projects in the past, which haven't always worked, but I think there's room to expand those and do them again. We've also done horse livery, which I'm not doing at the moment, for the reason that I found the people too difficult, not the horses. These are things that other possibilities, given time, money, planning permission. I think wild camping is something that could be popular without much investment really. Obstacle course or outdoor fitness. This is something that I was doing in the very little spare time I have, and it's something I'd like to do on farm. Yoga, I think on farm yoga would be good in nice weather. There is scope for more visits on farm with probably paying visitors that are not school visits. And again, the woodland and charcoal is a future possibility. The meat and egg sales, I started doing farmers markets, doing about 10 a month, but they just, in the end, just took too much time up. They weren't all profitable, so we no longer do those, but they did bring a lot of customers in. We then have a small farm shop. We just started as a shed, that developed into a bigger farm shop. It's very basic. We've sort of made things out of pallets and, you know, bits of wood and all sorts. So it's not a fancy farm shop. CSAs, we do the veg as a CSA with 35 members at the moment, and a waiting list of probably 20. There's always people wanting to join the veg. My son joined me when he left university. He's not interested in the farming side, but as a business person, marketing, everything else, it was brilliant. He developed the online sales, meat boxes, home delivery, did everything when he started it, all the admin, packing, delivering and everything else. But in the end, I think it just wore him out, and he wanted to do other things, so he's no longer as involved as he was. To be considered really before retailing, I'm concentrating more on the meat side at the on these slides. Abattoirs, absolutely essential. If you've no abattoir that's local and prepared to do the work, then you're a non-starter. The exception to that is poultry. I put in my own poultry abattoir in 2005, and that made all the difference. I was at one point taking chickens to Cheshire to be slaughtered to an abattoir there, which it wasn't good for the chickens or me or the environment. So now I've got our own poultry slaughter. I did my slaughter license, so I slaughter the chickens. Then we've got everything on site, cold rooms and everything else. The next thing is finding customers. We have, as I said, got lots of people on the doorstep. Most of them initially came from farmers markets, filling in forms and going onto the mailing list. When we're doing this, I'm thinking sort of probably 2005-06. There wasn't as much online things, no Facebook, Instagram and all the rest, so it really was just emails. I'm not sure the internet makes it that much easier. I think there's a lot of competition out there now. Supply and demand, that's a big thing really. We have an egg CSA. People pay a year at a time, and it's quite difficult to get the chickens to lay the right amount of eggs every week. Some weeks there's loads of eggs, and others we're just struggling a bit. So when we've got the shop and other aspects like farmers markets, that worked really well because the extras could go into that. The cost income and a business plan is probably the most important thing. Costs are always twice as much and income's never as much as you plan it to be. So I think it might have been better if somebody else had done my business plan that was a bit neutral, not as invested in it. Planning has been my big problem for everything. It only takes one person to complain and, you know, they investigate everything you're doing, which is what happened to us. For the buildings, we've, you know, applied for planning and got it, no problems, and then things have happened afterwards which have caused problems. Environmental health and trading standards, we got them involved from the start, and they've always been really helpful. The work-life balance, I think when you start doing diversification, it's something you need to consider really, especially if you've got family. There really isn't a work-life balance, is what I'm trying to say. It's difficult. And so I'll come to the long-term plan, which I'm getting old and decrepit and wearing out. There's no family to follow on, so we're probably looking at share farming options for the future. But anyway, that'll all have to be seen, and I'm almost dead on time, I think. Right, and if anybody could tell me what caused this, and it wasn't me scraping my name into an apple, it'd be really useful to find out. It must be some sort of weevil, I think, but if anybody could tell me, I'd like to know. Thank you.